This is an interesting transition question. It provides a little bit of an exception to some of the rules that I normally use for these. So just to show you why it's an exception, I would normally think about dumb summaries of the words and say, okay, well, I don't use these big fancy long words, but I use similar words to transition between ideas to connect sentences. And so what would they be? Well, thus is kind of just a fancy word for so. Nevertheless is a fancy word for but. Alternatively is kind of also a contrast, so it's also kind of a but word. And finally, I don't really know if I have a simpler version of that. It just kind of means finally. It means like the last step in a process. And if we look at these sentences, this isn't a multi-step process. Among the possibilities to reconfigure a building's lighting is the installation of full-pane windows to allow the greatest degree of sunlight to reach office interiors. Businesses can install light tubes. These are pipes placed in workplace roofs to capture and funnel sunlight down into a building's interior. Well, full-pane windows and light tubes seem to be different things. They're not the same thing. They're not the same process. And so finally wouldn't really make sense. Neither would so. We're not trying to say that the light tubes happen because of the full-pane windows. These are just different options. And this is really weird. Maybe you don't find it weird, but for me teaching dozens and dozens of this type of question, this doesn't happen very often, where the possible right answers kind of mean the same thing. They're both contrast words. Usually that means I can cross them out because I know that if they're both contrast words, they both can't be right. But here's a case where there is a slight enough difference that C is going to be right and B is going to be wrong. And it really comes down to this word, the word possibilities, right? The full pane windows are one possible way to improve the lighting in an office. The light tubes are an alternative way to do that, another possibility. And so we do have evidence that we can use to justify overriding one of our more typical rules about how to answer transition questions. In this case, the reason that nevertheless doesn't really work is it's almost dismissive. It's saying like a possibility is full pane windows, but you know what? That doesn't matter. There's also the light tubes. And we don't really want to dismiss the previous idea. We're not contrasting with it in that way to say that it doesn't matter. We just are listing a bunch of alternatives at different ways of doing things. And so there's almost, even though it's a contrast word, there is almost like an equalness to what's going on, right? Those are two equal possibilities of how businesses can solve this problem of light. It's a tricky question. If you got it wrong, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Like I said, normally we would cross out B and C because they kind of mean the same thing, but these words do have slight shades of difference that come up occasionally. And this is just one of the rare cases where, yeah, it mattered.